Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest in the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, so today I have Skip Wilson on the line, and he's founder and CEO over at Draft Media Partners. Skip, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, man. It's an honor.
All right, Skip. So we got some fun to talk about today. So forecasting advertising success before you spend a dime. Lots of individuals, lot of business owners, entrepreneurs, and executives that watch this show. And advertising is a big topic. So excited to get into your methodology, how you're doing what you're doing, and what exactly you're doing in advertising. So we'll get into all of that. But to get us kicked off, we'll start this episode the way that we start them all, with what we like to call our Mission Matters Minute. So Skip, at Mission Matters, our aim and our goal is to amplify stories for entrepreneurs, executives, and experts. That's our mission. Skip, what mission matters to you?
Our mission is we make dreams come true through advertising. And that's whether we're working with a business, helping them obtain like what their goals are. We mean that internally too, for our employees, trying to help them get to whatever their goals are. And then a lot of our business is actually through like referral partners and other ad agencies and things that use us for fulfillment. And it's helping them accomplish their goals. So using paid advertising, paid reach, specific message to a specific audience, to make dreams come true.
It's awesome. Love bringing business owners and founders on the show to share why they do what they do, how they're doing, and what we can learn from them. So great having you on. And I guess let's just start there. Like, were you always an entrepreneur? Was that always kind of in the cards for you?
So yes, but I didn't realize it. I mean, I very much had in my mind that I started out when I was 16. I was working as a copywriter. Mostly doing Press a Girl, and who's now my wife, by the way.
Amazing.
But
it works. So obviously you write good copy. We'll start there. Go ahead.
Right, exactly. But I wanted to be a writer because I thought it would impress her. And so the only jobs were in copywriting and things. So and then that morphed into me doing freelance like web design and things. Like WordPress was just becoming a thing. And so I sort of didn't realize it at the time, but I actually had a pretty successful freelance business. It was just me. I mean, true freelancing. But I did that all the way up through college. And then, but I always had it in my mind that I need to be a part of a big company. So
I didn't even maybe know entrepreneurship was a thing or like an option.
Yeah.
It was just like, you were just making money doing what you like doing.
Well, my dad was a business. My dad was in commercial real estate, but he lost his company when I was pretty young. Okay. So just to me, the idea of having now as an adult looking back on it, like, I mean, it was 100% his fault, but the poor choices, all that stuff. Right. But I always sort of had it in my mind that that's too risky. I don't really want to do that. The only thing that's sure is getting in with a big company and then working my way up. And then I did that. But then even when I was working at larger companies, whether it was Time Warner or then at iHeart, I was a department head. So I was building out my own department, my own teams, my own processes. So it's like
you're an entrepreneur in that sense, like in all those places. Yeah.
Exactly. And which is, I didn't really realize until really I was getting until probably about 7 or so years ago that I started realizing like, wait, I should do this for myself. Cause built what became like a $22 million division of the company and my pay stays the same. Right.
Yeah.
So I'm like, wait a second, something's off on that.
And so when was it a gradual progression? Was there a moment in time, like take me to that moment when you're like, oh man, I'm going to take the leap, like to actually go out there on my own and do it. Like, what was that like? That's always scary for me. Even me thinking about it, when I'm asking you the question, I'm thinking about my own story. I'm getting a little nervous over here. What was that like for you?
It was by far the hardest decision ever. Looking back on it, it shouldn't have been. I had really a core customer base that I was going to be able to start off with. So I wasn't starting from scratch. I wasn't starting at zero. Because I'd built, so many good relationships and things. So it shouldn't have been as scary as it was. But yeah, no, I was absolutely terrified. it was the hardest. I mean, I've got 3 kids and a mortgage and, and a loving wife. There's some pretty
responsibilities to say the least.
Exactly. It's not just my life I'm putting on the line, right? Like it's I'm taking a whole team of people down with me if I go down. So it was absolutely terrifying. And what's funny is that I didn't really think the stuff that I thought would be hard ended up being
Mhm.
easy. Things like taxes and insurance and those types of things were the things that scared me from going out on my own.
Mhm.
But then once you actually take the leap, that's actually fairly easy, right? You just hire an
Yeah.
accountant and just do what they say and those types of things. So,
But you don't know at that time because you didn't deal with it. Yeah.
but it was the little. I was a couple of weeks out on my own, and I bought this printer, and I couldn't get this printer connected to my computer. And I sat there, and it took me like 2.5 hours, and that's when I had like almost like a breakdown.
Couldn't call IT.
Yeah, exactly. I was just overcome with the awareness of like, oh, it's just me now. Like, yeah, there's no IT department. There's no. That's so.
It did make you great. Did it make you? I went through some similar things like that when I left corporate America, and it made me really like more appreciative of those systems and even the people. Not saying I didn't appreciate them, but I took them for some of them. I took for granted. I'll admit it. Like I just thought, oh yeah, can you fix this? And people were doing their jobs. Like, but I didn't really understand the value of being able to pick up the phone and do that. So I took it for granted. And then after that, when I was in that same situation, I'm like, oh man, I missed that.
Exactly. Yeah, the stuff that's almost annoying as an employee or like funny as an employee, like things like a handbook, like an employee handbook. It's like the minute you get that at a job, like that's going straight in the trash, right? You never look at it, you never read it. But then when you realize, when you're having to build those things and you don't have any of that infrastructure, you're like, oh wow, we actually need to figure out like what happens if there is like an HR complaint? What if like having to do all that stuff.
Yeah.
All the things that I thought were like silly and dumb. It's like, oh wow, that's actually really important stuff.
Yeah, it's so interesting. What about the people around you? Like I always like for me, I left from I had a big career change. So when I went from finance to media, like that was like people thought I was crazy, of course, because that was a huge change.
Sure.
For you, like what was that like when people were like, you're going out on your own, you're gonna like, are you sure you want like what was your system like? Like how'd that feel?
There was a lot of, because it almost felt like a breakup of sorts leaving the department that I had been so invested in building and things. Like there was a lot of, I mean, honestly, I feel like almost like I was getting a lot of like, please don't go, please don't do this, please, that, and types of phone calls and those types of things. And then, and that coupled with my own internal fear is like a hard thing to like go over. And then, but then once actually doing it, with the exception of those little moments like with the printer, it is so much better. Even though I'm working longer hours, I mean, you in corporate America, you can have those days where
you get in charge of your own schedule. Now you don't work 60, you work 100. It's great.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like it sounds
amazing.
It's like on paper it makes no sense. It's like in my iHeart days, I could have just like coasted for a day if I really needed to. Like I could have just had like a okay day. But when you're doing it on your own, it's like but it's so much better. I mean, even though it is objective, like looking from the outside in, you're like, how is that a better thing? I don't know. It is for some people. I understand it's not right for everybody, but for some folks, it very much is.
Yeah, I'm still figuring it out. I don't know yet, Skip, but we're gonna jump around a bit here.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's get into advertising. Let's talk some ad talk here. So now you're out on your own. You're thinking about like obviously you mentioned you had some individuals and some clients you wanted to serve even as you were going out on your own. Like talk about the methodology and what you wanted to bring to Draft Media Partners in this concept. Like what made it so special for you to want to go forward with it?
So I was going into, when I was launching my own business, I was adjacent to what I was doing at iHeart. I mean, at iHeart, it was very much an advertising, like all digital advertising. When I started Draft, the goal was actually to create a MarTech. So somebody like iHeart would have actually been like was one of our ideal client prospects, right? Yeah. And because when I had a meeting with my financial advisor a couple of years prior to that, and he put 3 plans in front of me and he was like, all right, this plan is like high risk, but will likely produce something like, I'm just making up these numbers. I don't remember. Yeah. This one will produce like 12% return. This one's very middle of the road, but is a lot safer. We'll do 7%. And then this one's, whatever. Yeah. And I was like, why doesn't that exist in the advertising world? Because we know like
Mm.
that a landing page should convert at about 3 to 5%. We
Mhm.
know that a radio campaign about 1% of the QM should respond to the ad. It's like we know those objective things.
Yeah.
Why can't we forecast that? Because we always say advertising is an investment, but unlike
Yeah.
most investments, it's kind of when it comes like, hey, if I give you $1 million, what can I get in return? It was
Mhm.
always met with like I don't know, an
Yeah.
invoice, definitely an invoice.
Definitely.
And so I just didn't like that answer. And so, after at that point, 15-ish years of giving him essentially that same answer,
Mhm.
I was like, I had sort of the poor man's version of it, like my little like spreadsheet of industry averages and those types of things.
Mhm.
And I was like, we just need to turn this into a platform, into a software. So
Mm.
if it's a roofing company in Des Moines, Iowa, and they need 50 appointments a month or whatever,
Mhm.
it can build out the plan from that. And so that was the original idea, was to create a MarTech media planning software.
Mm.
And then of course no one bought that, and which is okay, because what I didn't realize is that our target audience, media companies, mid-size agencies, fractional CMOs, they don't have any money. And so the
Mm.
last thing they need is to be paying for like another software as a service, right?
Interesting. Yeah.
And so we pivoted after about 6 months or so. We had to pivot to being. We just kept getting these requests of, hey, you built this plan. That's great. Can you just execute it?
Yeah.
And so we realized that was actually the bigger opportunity. And so that's when we pivoted to being a ad execution company. Then
And
the
how
planning
great
tool's
was
free.
it that it only took 6 months? And I love that concept of you being able to pivot and you actually doing it. Many business owners and businesses, a lot of times they may fail is because they're not listening to that feedback of like, will you do it for us? Like, that's sometimes where the biggest gold is for us. I'll give you a quick example. We when we started this, we had no intention of launching shows for other individuals, other podcast hosts. And at some point we just said yes, and now we've launched over 200 shows. That wasn't even in the plan. That wasn't what
Right.
we were like. We had no idea we were going to be in that business. And that ends up being one of our most interesting things that I believe we do.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I was actually kind of trying to get out of the, my goal was to sort of get out of the advertising world. And it turns out that that's actually exactly what was needed, because there's so many ad agencies that are great at coming up with great copy or coming up with great taglines and those types of things. But then they'll forget to check the box that makes sure that it runs in the right market. So it's like you got like all this plan, or something like that.
Yeah.
The actual execution was where everything was falling off. And so, but that's the kind of insight you don't get until you do start and you just listen to the feedback that you get. I mean, it's the same thing with an ad campaign too. The idea of a campaign failing is kind of old hat. That shouldn't be the case. Like that's almost impossible, because you get such instant feedback. If it's longer than if it's a 4-week or longer campaign, you should be able to figure out, okay, our ad's not getting clicked, or people aren't searching us after they hear it or whatever, or see it. That means our ad stinks, or we have the wrong audience. So tweak those things. Or it's getting the right traffic. They're coming to our page. It's not converting. Well, that means it's either an offer issue or the landing page issue. If you stay on top of the feedback you're getting, then the idea of the whole thing failing is kind of impossible. It's like that ad may fail, or that landing page may fail, or that whatever may fail. But the idea of sending a specific message to a specific audience doesn't fail. Like, it's just, you got to figure out which audience and which message.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit more about the science or the forecasting aspect of this and how it works. So for some that watch this may be a new concept, because maybe they're listening to the same thing that you mentioned you were giving people for many years,
Right.
Which is I'll give you an invoice.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So a good sort of rule of thumb is some cocktail napkin numbers. Every industry is different. Every platform.
Of course. Yeah.
But if you're just trying to sort of cocktail napkin something out, you're looking at about a 1-ish% click-through rate or higher on search and social, you're looking at about a 0.1% in display, and then you're looking at about a 5% conversion once they come to your site. The other media also has those same metrics, but that's a little bit more complicated. It's like percent of reach, response, and stuff. So most people listening to this, we'll just keep it digital for right now because digital is easier. Although just know that those metrics are out there for other platforms as well. But that's a good rule of thumb. So if it costs you about $5 or $6 to get someone to your site, know that it's going to cost you, about 20 or so people to your site before you can get a good lead. So you have likely a acquisition cost of around $100. That's a good sort of cocktail napkin number. And because usually, especially small business owners, will fall into two categories when they're looking at an ad campaign. They either view marketing as a necessary evil, so they don't really care to track any of it.
Yeah.
Or they view it as some sort of like magic money machine. And they just
got to pull the right lever on the right campaign and everything's going to be fixed.
Exactly. If they spend $1,000,
not Vegas, people.
Yeah, exactly. If you spend $1,000, you're not going to get 1,000 good leads, and that's there's not a platform that can do that, right? So you want to make sure that math works within your industry.
And so one of the things you mentioned was platforms and keeping it digital. Talk about just the types of different advertising that you're doing, like just like platforms, things like that.
Yeah. So, Draft, we focus just on paid media. So there are some things that I won't talk about, things like SEO, search engine optimization, which is just basically showing up organically when someone searches you, and those types of things, more guerrilla marketing tactics and things that you have less direct control on. Paid advertising is like a light switch. Like you can turn it on and you're instantly if it's Google, you're at the top of the page or not. And then you turn it off and it's like you never existed. And so there's good and bad to that. But everything with us is paid media. So when we talk about paid advertising, it's radio, television, print. That's sort of the traditional media. Then you've got outdoor, which is everything from park benches to the backs of buses to Times Square billboards, right? And then there's what's called OTT, or over the top television, which is things like Hulu ads, Prime Video ads, all of those things. And then there's display ads, social ads, and search. And then there's direct mail, which is anything you might get like in the mailbox.
Yeah. So and then Draft, you cover all of those?
We do.
Wow.
And that comes from listening to, we didn't originally.
Yeah.
My personal experience, most of my background, and most of our even at the 3 employee level at our first sort of core team, we were pretty much only digital because that was all of our expertise.
Yeah.
But because I really wanted to build, once we pivoted to being an ad fulfillment company, I wanted to be purely platform agnostic. In other words, I wanted to be able to say, oh, okay, you're wanting to get this anti-smoking campaign out, then you really need traditional TV, traditional radio, and Spotify advertising, podcast. I wanted to be able to offer those solutions without a preference for one over the other.
That's great. That's not easy, by the way. That's great.
Yeah, we structured we really, in our sort of going into our second year, structured our mergers and acquisitions to build that out. So we find a really great direct mail company, buy them. We find a really great media buyer, bring those people into ours. So that was how we were able to sort of build out those verticals.
Yeah, that's great. That's because now you're not, because sometimes if you go to a direct mail company and you ask them what's the best answer for their campaign, nothing against direct mail, by the way, anybody watching, I'm a fan. But what's probably the tool they're going to offer you for your campaign? It's going to be direct mail if that's all they got, right?
Exactly. And I also wanted it to be where our own incentives were equally spread. So we priced everything out so that our profit margin is the same across all platforms.
Wow. So that's pretty fair too, because it doesn't have to be. Yeah.
Exactly. Usually there is like one sort of like, for example, if it's a TV ad, if it's a production agency, they're making way more on video production than anything else. So of course they recommend video tactics, right? And whether that's right for the client or not. Well, and in fairness to them, it's not even like it's It's just that that's what they're trained on,
It's
right?
not even a conscious decision. If that's
Correct.
the tool they're used to, not necessarily. If that's the tool that they're trained in, they came up in, they know like the back of their hand. Well, of course they're going to recommend what they know the best because that's what they feel is going to be the best. They don't know the whole industry. That's why I think Draft is so unique, is by being able to have expertise in all these different like areas. You kind of get, I don't know if I should use the word a fair shake, but you're going to get a better view on possibly what's going to make the most sense. Like that's pretty cool to me.
Yeah, we do. I mean, the plans are built by algorithms within the industry and within past learning. So because of that, it kind of takes like the human now every time a person will, like whoever the account manager is on that account will make sure that it makes sense. But for the most part, if it's a dentist in Philadelphia or whatever, it's building the best plan in that market for that industry. And it doesn't care which of those products it is.
Yeah.
And then we figure out, okay, this has got some of this in it. So, hey, you're doing our media buying for this, or hey, this has got some of this in it. So it's Facebook. And so it's your, so we divvy it out internally.
Yeah.
So that, because not everybody's an expert at everything. I still pretty much keep to digital, but in terms of the actual execution stuff, but our robots don't care.
Exactly. What are some of the niches of the industries that you work with? You mentioned dentists, you mentioned a couple others. Like what are some of those industries that you favor, or are you agnostic?
So because we mostly work behind the scenes, I mean, 80% of our business is behind either other agencies, other media companies, or fractional CMOs. Most of them will have like a specific, like, so it may, like, for example, one of them is a real estate focused agency and all they do is real estate.
Yeah.
Another one is healthcare. But because we're behind the scenes of them, we don't really have an industry preference. There are some that we can use past learnings from and others that we don't. But for the most part, at this point, I mean, we have 131 active clients. And so just, like right now. And so they really span.
So you're busy. That's awesome, man. That's great. This is to find a shop like yours and to be able to do that like that. That's special. That's good. And that's good. That's a great client base. And they're obviously coming back, right?
That's right. Yeah, exactly. That's the big thing. Most people don't know, especially the way we're, any advertising, you're usually not making much money the first month because you've got so many hours in the creative and everything else.
Of course.
So everyone wants the campaign to do well because we don't really make money until like the third or fourth month usually.
Yeah, no, that's the numbers. We tell people that all the time. That's the numbers. Then that's fair. And that's just the way the industry's set up. That being said, I'm curious. So you started in MarTech. Obviously, there's a lot of different techs out there and otherwise. What's interesting to you? And because you just have a unique vantage point. You came from obviously very large companies like iHeart. You've been doing copywriting since you were writing your wife love letters or your girlfriend in the beginning, and you're trying to learn how to write so you could woo her. Great. You won there too. Now you got a great agency doing well. What interests you in terms of like what's out there? It could be technology, it could be delivery, whatever. Like what interests you right now in advertising? What's exciting?
One of the things that this doesn't sound exciting, but it's exciting for like us as a business. But one of the things that I think is particularly interesting is that about 8 years ago, one of the biggest problems is where there were massive layoffs in the advertising space. So you had companies that had maybe a team of 30 people in the marketing department were getting shrunk down to like 6 or 7 people. Right?
Yeah, that doesn't sound interesting or exciting. No, I'm just joking.
But
well, what's exciting? A lot of people were laid off.
Hey, it's great. No,
like what? Like,
no.
Write me a letter on that question. No, go ahead.
but that stunk, and that was bad. That was an objectively bad thing. What came out of that was that you had one, a team of 5 people that are still having to do the jobs of 30 people.
Of course, yeah.
And now it's almost really since the past 2 or 3 years, now there's that same group of 5 or 6 people is now working for multiple companies. So it's not even one company one team is stressed working with one company. It's one team that's stressed doing the job of what would have been like 150 people because it's like 3 or 4 different businesses. And I think that's a trend that's going to continue in the industry. And why that's exciting to me even though it doesn't sound like it's exciting. Why that's exciting to me is that that's going to force a lot of automations and that a lot of innovations and automations. Part of that will be, I think, directly beneficial to companies like ours. I mean, that's part of what structured how we are, is we can help alleviate some of those pains.
Yeah.
But so that's nice from a business standpoint. But I think it also too, marketing is very much an art. Like there's a lot of art to marketing. Advertising really isn't. It really is more of a objective science. And I think by having such small teams, it's going to force a lot of that objectivity, because it's just going to require so many things to be automated.
Yeah. That is exciting, and the winners ultimately are the business owners and the people that are doing great work. So the people that do approach it as a science, like the industry is gonna skew more and more to individuals that think just like yourself, which will obviously be a win, like for you and your business,
exactly,
and for the business owners that work with you. I mean, so it's win-win. Yeah.
Exactly. It's good for everyone. While it may mean that some folks are having to wear multiple hats and those things, and there's goods and bads.
That's life now, as far as I'm concerned. After the pandemic, if you're not wearing more than one hat, then I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Then you're at risk, is what I say. You're at risk if you don't have another hat on. I don't care how long you've been at a place.
That's exactly right. Yeah, it's going to cause folks to have different varying skill sets and varying connections, and there's a certain amount of freedom to that too that I think will come for the individuals. So in other words, there will be more people working from home and those things. So it's all good stuff.
Yeah, I agree with that. Well, Skip, what's next, man? What's next for you? What's next for the company? You're growing, you're doing great work. What's next?
We just moved out. We've been in sort of stealth mode. I really wanted to, we spent our first, we're going into we've been 3 years. We're going into our 4th year, and we really have been fairly quiet. In other words, we've pretty much only grown by, referrals and organic growth. And so we are sort of just now letting the world know we exist, things like this podcast. That we're only a couple of months into sort of making our presence known. And so that is the big, that's the big shift for us. Even our website and those types of things, everything's been sort of we knew we needed a site. Nobody really goes to it because it is all referrals. So nobody really cares about a website when it's a referral business. And so all of those things, revamping those things, building those things, truly getting our, truly having a focus on, we've been solely focused on the product side and building a great platform and product, that now it's all about seeing how far we can scale that.
Amazing. And if somebody's listening to this and they want to follow up, they want to learn more about Draft, what's the best way for them to do that, Skip?
You can, info@draftmediapartners.com or info@draftadvertising.com. Same email, same place. Start out there. We do our that planning platform, our business center, all of that stuff is, we don't charge for any of that. So feel free to use that. Build plans in it. You can request plans. We'll build plans for you. And there's no charge for any of that unless you decide to run the campaign through us, which obviously that's the goal for us, is that you'll say, yes, do it. But we'll build the plan and anything for free.
Man, that's great, Skip. And for everybody watching or listening to this, we'll put all that information in the show notes. And speaking of the audience, if this is your first time with Mission Matters and you haven't hit the subscribe or follow button yet, this is your invitation. Hit that button, because this is a daily show each and every day. We're bringing you new thought leaders, new business owners, new executives, and we don't want you to miss a thing. So again, hit those buttons. And Skip, this has been so much fun, man. Thanks again for coming on the show, and congrats on all the success.
Awesome, man. Thank you.